As the years go by, it's easy to fall into certain habits that, without realizing it, make life more complicated and distance us from the people we love most. Maybe you've felt the weight of loneliness, struggled to maintain your independence, or searched for a little peace amid the challenges this stage of life brings. But what we don't always see is how some of the things we do, or fail to do, might be affecting not just our well-being, but also our most meaningful relationships. I'm Gabriel, and in this video, we're going to lay out those unpleasant attitudes and behaviors that few dare to point out, but that might be holding you back from living fully. We'll draw from the timeless wisdom of the Stoics and other great thinkers to identify these habits and, most importantly, discover how to break free from them. Because this stage of life isn't about giving up, it's about growing, transforming, and living with authenticity. Stay with me, because what you're about to learn might just be the key to reconnecting with yourself and the people who matter most. Let's get started. Number 1. Neglecting your personal hygiene. It's not something people talk about often, but it's a reality many face as time goes on. As we age, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that certain habits don't matter as much anymore. Maybe energy levels aren't the same, or we simply stop prioritizing things we once considered essential, like daily hygiene. However, this neglect, though it may seem minor, has a much bigger impact than you might think, not just on how others see you, but on how you feel about yourself. Taking care of your hygiene isn't just about appearance. It's a reflection of how much you value your own dignity and well-being. When you look in the mirror after a refreshing shower with clean hair, fresh clothes, and a sense of renewal, something shifts in your mood. You feel more connected to yourself and the world around you. Now imagine the opposite. Days of small omissions piling up, not brushing your teeth, not changing your clothes regularly, avoiding simple grooming habits. Over time, these small choices affect you more than you realize. But there's something deeper here. Hygiene isn't just about you. It also affects the way you connect with others. A hug, a close conversation, or even having guests over can become uncomfortable if people notice you've been neglecting these aspects. Without meaning to, you might be sending a message of disinterest or even isolation. And the truth is, no one wants to feel that way, not you and not those around you. Seneca once said, "We should care for our bodies like a temple, not out of vanity, but out of respect." That respect starts with you. Maintaining good hygiene habits doesn't mean being flawless or perfect. It simply means doing what's necessary to feel comfortable in your own skin and projecting that confidence to others. If you've ever felt that it doesn't really matter to take care of yourself, pause for a moment. Think about how small acts, taking a good shower, wearing fresh, well-chosen clothes, can lift your mood and improve your relationships. This isn't about vanity, it's about self-care. It's about telling the world and yourself that you matter, here and now. Don't let neglect become the habit that dims your vitality. Every day is a chance to start fresh, and that fresh start can be as simple as getting up, taking care of yourself, and showing the world the best version of you, because you're worth it. Number 2. Isolating yourself and neglecting your social life. I remember Mr. Richard, a neighbor who lived in the same building where I grew up. He was a charming man, always ready to share a smile or an interesting story about his younger years. But over time, something changed. After his wife passed away and his children moved to other cities, he started spending more and more time alone. At first, it seemed like a conscious decision, a period of mourning. But months turned into years, and Mr. Richard stopped going out, stopped calling his friends, and even stopped answering the door when neighbors invited him to gatherings. One day, my mother asked me to go with him to the store. I was surprised by how reluctant he was to accept my company, as if he preferred to carry everything on his own, even though he clearly needed help. On the way, I asked him why he no longer attended the building's get-togethers like he used to. His answer stuck with me. "I have nothing left to contribute. It's easier to be alone than to feel out of place." Like many others, Mr. Richard had fallen into a dangerous trap, isolating himself under the guise of independence. His loneliness wasn't a conscious choice, but a response to the fear of being a burden or not being understood. Over time, that isolation took a toll, not just on his emotional well-being, but on his vitality. He lost interest in the things he once loved, and his world became smaller and smaller. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "We are social beings by nature, and while introspection is important, we need others to grow and find meaning. Isolating yourself might seem like a temporary solution, a refugee from the noise and demands of the world, but over time, it turns into an emotional prison." I'm not saying you need to be surrounded by people all the time. Appreciating solitude is a virtue, but completely disconnecting from others can be one of the most harmful choices you make. A social life doesn't have to be loud or demanding. Sometimes it's as simple as having coffee with a friend, making a phone call, or taking a walk in the park where you exchange glances with strangers. Think about this. When was the last time you allowed yourself to share something with someone? It doesn't have to be a big gathering or a formal commitment. Sometimes, the simplest connection can remind you that you're still part of life's fabric, that your stories, your thoughts, and your presence still matter. That day, Mr. Richard taught me something valuable. Although it was hard at first, he eventually started accepting invitations from the neighbors, and little by little, his laughter filled the hallways again. He learned that it wasn't about having something important to contribute. It was simply about being present. And that presence, even if it seems small, can change your perspective and remind you that the world isn't as lonely as it sometimes feels. Don't let fear, pride, or comfort keep you from others. Maintaining your connections isn't just an act of emotional survival, it's a way to live more fully. Because, as Marcus Aurelius said, "What we do for others, we do for ourselves." Number 3, holding a grudge against your children or family. Picture this. You're sitting at home, gazing out the window, thinking about the years that have passed. Memories flood your mind. Nights spent awake, sacrifices made to ensure your children never lacked anything. But now, something feels different. Maybe they don't call as often as they used to. Maybe they live far away or seem too caught up in their own lives. That distance, whether real or perceived, can become fertile ground for resentment, a grudge that, even if you don't openly acknowledge it, starts to invade your peace of mind. Holding on to resentment is like carrying a backpack full of stones. Every thought of, "They didn't appreciate everything I did," or "Why don't they visit more often?" adds another weight. Over time, that backpack becomes so heavy that moving forward feels impossible. What we often fail to realize is that these stones don't burden those we believe are responsible. They weigh us down, draining the joy from our present moments. Epictetus once said, "It's not events that disturb us, but our interpretation of them." Maybe your children don't call as often as you'd like, but that doesn't necessarily mean they don't love you. Maybe they don't visit frequently, but that doesn't erase what you mean to them. The real issue is that when we let resentment take over, we build an invisible wall that isolates us even more. Grudges don't just harm your relationships, they take a toll on your emotional and physical health. Studies show that emotions like resentment increase stress, raise blood pressure, and disrupt sleep. It's a silent enemy, aging you from the inside out faster than time itself. Forgiveness may seem idealistic or even unfair when you feel neglected or hurt. But here's the secret. Forgiveness isn't a gift for others, It's an act of self-liberation. It doesn't mean justifying someone else's actions. It means choosing not to carry the weight of resentment anymore. You can start small. Write down your thoughts. Take a quiet moment, grab a piece of paper, and let your feelings flow. Don't edit, don't overanalyze, just write. When you're done, read it to yourself and reflect. Do I want these emotions to keep controlling my life, or am I ready to let them go? Marcus Aurelius reminded us in his Meditations that mistakes are part of human nature, and those who have wronged you have done so out of ignorance or circumstances you may not understand. That doesn't mean accepting everything without question, but it does mean you have a choice: stay trapped in resentment or make space for peace. Think about what you could gain by letting go. You might rediscover the joy of an unexpected call, a heartfelt message, or a simple conversation. And if that doesn't happen, you will still have gained something priceless: your emotional freedom. Because in the end, resentment doesn't punish those you hold responsible. It only traps you. Letting go isn't weakness. It's strength. It's a way to reclaim control over your life and the peace you truly deserve. If this video is helping you recognize habits that might be affecting your life without you realizing it, and if you're discovering new ways to face them with wisdom and purpose, consider subscribing and hitting the like button. Not only does it motivate me to keep creating valuable content, but it also helps more people find tools to navigate this stage of life with authenticity and fulfillment. Tell me, where are you watching this from? I'd love to read your comments and learn a little more about you. Stay with me until the end. Lesson number 11 might just be the key to changing the way you see your well-being and your most important relationships. Let's keep going. Number 4, living to keep up appearances. In a world where appearances seem to carry so much weight, it's easy to fall into the trap of trying to prove that everything is fine, even when it's not. Often, this happens without us even realizing it. It's those moments when you say you don't need help, even though deep down you do. When you exaggerate past achievements or downplay your current struggles for fear of seeming vulnerable. Living to keep up appearances might feel like a protective shield, but in reality, it's a cage that traps you in expectations that aren't truly yours. Imagine being in a theater, always on stage, playing a role. Day after day, you try to make your performance flawless so that the audience, your family, your friends, even strangers, believes you have everything under control. But behind the curtain, when the lights go out and you're alone with yourself, you feel the weight of maintaining that facade. Exhausting, isn't it? And yet, many of us would rather bear that burden than allow ourselves to be seen for who we truly are, strengths, vulnerabilities, and all. Seneca once said, "It is better to be scorned for who you are than to be accepted for who you are not." And he was right. When you live for appearances, you build relationships based on illusion, not authenticity. Over time, that facade becomes so rigid that even you start to forget who you really are. I once heard a story about an old man who lived in a small town. He had a beautiful house, always pristine on the outside, with a garden full of perfectly tended flowers. Every week, he welcomed visits from friends and family, greeting them with a warm smile and words of encouragement. From the outside, his life seemed perfect. But one day, after a storm, someone noticed that a window at the back of his house was broken and decided to take a closer look. Peering inside, they saw something completely different. The house was in disarray, the furniture was worn, and the walls were neglected. It was nothing like the flawless home people had imagined. In reality, he had spent all his energy maintaining the exterior while completely neglecting what was inside. This is powerful because many of us do the same with our lives. We focus so much on maintaining an outward image, saying we're fine, acting like we don't need anyone, pretending we can handle everything, that we forget to care for what truly matters: our inner well-being, our emotions, and our genuine connections. Have you ever stopped to think about how much time and energy you spend maintaining that facade? How many times have you smiled to hide what you're really feeling? How often have you talked about past successes to avoid admitting a present difficulty? In the end, the truth always finds its way out, and the relationships that truly matter are the ones built on honesty, not perfection. Living for appearances is like wearing a heavy mask. At first, it seems like protection, but over time, you realize it's suffocating. Taking off that mask might feel scary, but it's the first step toward building a lighter, more authentic life. Remember, you don't have to be perfect to be worthy of love and respect. You just have to be you. Number 5, falling into envy toward those who have what you don't. It's a feeling that can creep up at any moment, even if you don't easily recognize it. Maybe it happens when you see someone who seems to have better health, more family support, or a life that, from the outside, looks more comfortable and fulfilling. That brief moment of comparison leaves a mark. You ask yourself, why them and not me? And without realizing it, that seed of envy starts to grow, taking up space in your mind and heart. Envy is a subtle but powerful emotion. It disguises itself as frustration or discontent, but deep down, it reveals something more profound, a disconnection from what you have and who you are. When you focus on what others possess, you lose sight of the valuable things present in your own life. It's like staring out the window at your neighbor's garden, admiring their flowers, while your own wither from neglect. Marcus Aurelius said, "Don't waste time thinking about the fortunes of others. Focus on how to make the most of your own." This idea isn't just about material wealth, it applies to every aspect of life. Maybe your neighbor has good health, but you have the wisdom to appreciate life's simple moments. Maybe your friends get more visits from their children, but you have the freedom to choose how to live your days. When we stop comparing, we realize that our own lives hold unique riches that don't shine simply because we haven't learned to truly see them. Envy is also a heavy burden. Not only does it keep you focused on what you lack, but it can create an invisible wall between you and those you love or admire. When you envy someone, it becomes harder to feel genuine joy for their happiness or success, and that can damage relationships. It's like drinking poison and expecting someone else to suffer. In the end, you are the one who pays the price. But there's a powerful practice that counteracts envy: conscious gratitude. Every day, take a few minutes to think about 3 things you appreciate in your life. They don't have to be big achievements or material possessions. It could be as simple as a conversation that made you smile, a meal you enjoyed, or the fact that you're here, alive, with another chance to learn and grow. Imagine how you'd feel if you stopped focusing on what others have and started valuing what's already yours. Letting go of envy doesn't just improve your mood, it creates space for you to reconnect with what truly matters, your ability to build a meaningful life, regardless of external circumstances. In the end, true wealth isn't measured by what others own or by what you think you're missing. It's measured by your ability to enjoy what you already have, to appreciate the present moment, and to find fulfillment in the simple, authentic things that give your life meaning. Number 6, neglecting your most valuable friendships. As the years go by, it's easy to assume that deep friendships can sustain themselves, especially when life feels full of personal challenges. Health issues, family concerns, and the thought that, at this age, things are different, can push friendships to the background. But this neglect, though subtle, can be one of the saddest and most damaging things that happen at this stage of life. Maybe you feel like you no longer have as much in common with certain friends, or that physical and emotional distance has made it harder to stay in touch. Perhaps you believe that after so many years, there's no need to make an effort because the bond will always be there. But the truth is, when we stop nurturing these relationships, we allow them to wither. Long silences, excuses for not calling or visiting, and a lack of genuine interest can erode even the strongest connections. Think back to someone who once felt like a brother or sister to you, that person with whom you shared moments no one else knows about, the one who made you laugh until you cried, or who could simply sit in silence with you and make you feel understood. Now ask yourself, how long has it been since you really talked? Not just a quick greeting or a casual chat, but a real conversation, the kind that makes you feel alive and connected. Seneca said, "Friendship is not just a refuge in difficult times, but a constant source of joy." And at this stage of life, when our circles often shrink, those connections become more important than ever. Neglecting them means depriving yourself of one of life's greatest gifts, someone who knows you, appreciates you, and reminds you of who you are beyond your current circumstances. There's also an added risk at this age: pride. Thinking, if they don't reach out, why should I? May feel like independence, but in reality, it's just another barrier that isolates you further. Friendships aren't about who makes the first move. They're about recognizing their value and being intentional about keeping them alive. If you realize you've let someone important slip away, now is the time to change that. A phone call, a visit, or even a simple message can make a huge difference. Don't dwell on what may have been lost, focus on what you can still build. Reconnecting isn't about reliving the past, it's about sharing the present with someone who values it as much as you do. Neglecting friendships is one of those things we do without realizing it, yet it has a profound impact on our happiness. Don't let time or circumstances dim the bonds that matter most, because in the end, it's not the years you've lived that count. It's the connections you've kept alive along the way. Number 7. Constantly criticizing younger generations. It's one of those habits that starts as an innocent comment but can slowly turn into something destructive. Phrases like, "Back in my day, things were different," or "Young people today don't know anything" might seem harmless at first, but they create an emotional barrier between you and younger generations, including your own children and grandchildren. What you might not realize is that this attitude doesn't just affect your relationships, it also limits your ability to learn and adapt to the present. The Stoics had a clear perspective on this. In Meditations, Marcus Aurelius advised against judging others before first examining ourselves. This principle is especially relevant when it comes to criticizing younger generations. Instead of seeing their differences as flaws, we can try to understand them as opportunities to learn something new. Every generation faces different challenges and develops unique ways of adapting to the world. When we criticize without seeking to understand, we shut ourselves off from change and from the wealth of perspectives that could enrich our own lives. Constant criticism also takes an emotional toll. It feeds a negative view of the world, one where everything seems worse than it used to be, and traps you in nostalgia, idealizing the past while dismissing the present. But the present isn't better or worse, it's simply different. What would you gain by focusing more on the possibilities of today instead of on what you believe has been lost? The philosopher Epictetus reminded us that we cannot control other people's behavior, but we can control how we respond to it. So instead of criticizing, what if you chose to observe without judgment? Seeing the world through the eyes of younger generations can be an exercise in humility and growth. You may not always agree, but that openness can build bridges instead of walls. Think about this. When you talk to younger people, how often do you tell them what they're doing wrong instead of asking them how they see the world? Constant criticism shuts down conversations, but curiosity sparks them. A simple shift in attitude can turn a distant relationship into a meaningful connection. In the end, criticizing without trying to understand doesn't just affect those around you, it affects you. It isolates you from the present and from people who could bring something valuable into your life. Practicing empathy doesn't mean accepting everything without question, but it does mean opening yourself to the possibility of learning, of understanding, and, in the process, strengthening the relationships that still have room to grow. Because true wisdom, as the Stoics taught, isn't about judging, it's about understanding. Number 8, living trapped in your past frustrations. Sometimes it's impossible not to think about the moments when things didn't go as planned. Maybe it was a project that never took off, a relationship that ended badly, or decisions that, in hindsight, you wish you had made differently. These thoughts have a way of settling into your mind, like a film that plays over and over, reminding you of what could have been. But how much longer do you plan to carry those, "What if I had done things differently?" I know this because I've been there too, moments when my mind insists on revisiting the past, replaying mistakes or missed opportunities. And while reflection can be useful for growth, getting stuck in that loop only drains the energy you need to live in the present. It's like trying to drive a car while only looking in the rearview mirror. You won't get anywhere, and worse, you might crash into the opportunities right in front of you. The Stoics were clear about this. Seneca said, "You cannot turn back the river of time, but you can learn to flow with it." What happened, happened. The past cannot be changed, but it can be reinterpreted. Instead of seeing it as a collection of failures or losses, what if you viewed it as the teacher that has shaped who you are today? Every choice, even the painful ones, has played a role in your journey. The problem is that we often cling to frustration because we believe that doing so somehow holds us accountable, as if mentally punishing ourselves could undo what happened. But that self-punishment changes nothing. It only keeps you stuck. Forgiving yourself is one of the most freeing things you can do, not because you erase the past, but because you choose to stop letting it control you. Try this exercise. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine carrying a backpack. Each frustration, each regret is a stone inside it. Feel the weight. Now ask yourself, what would it feel like to walk through life without this burden? What could I do if I finally let it go? It's easier than you think. You don't need grand rituals or dramatic declarations, just an internal decision. I will no longer let this define me. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts." If you choose to focus your energy on what you can still do, rather than on what you can no longer change, you'll start to feel that weight lift, and the path ahead will become clearer. Because in the end, the only moment where you truly have power is right now. Don't define yourself by the frustrations you carry. Let them go, not because they don't matter, but because they have already served their purpose to teach you. Now it's your turn to move forward, lighter, clearer, and free to begin again every single day. Number 9, rejecting new ideas or experiences. It's easy to think that at a certain age, there's no need to embrace anything new. You might believe that things have always been this way and that modern ideas or experiences simply aren't for you. But this kind of thinking, though it may seem harmless, can become a barrier that isolates you and deprives you of one of life's greatest sources of vitality: continuous learning. Imagine your life as a book. The previous chapters are already written, filled with beautiful moments, challenges overcome, and deep lessons learned. But if you decide to close the book now, thinking you've already lived enough, what happens to the chapters that could still be written? Wouldn't that be an incredible loss? Every new experience, every idea you choose to explore, is a blank page waiting to be filled with something unexpected. I remember a comment from one of the channel's listeners, Margarita, who shared her story a few months ago. Margarita is 72 years old and in her own words had always been one of those people who say new things aren't for them. She avoided learning about technology, had little interest in her grandchildren's activities because those were modern things, and turned down invitations that took her outside her routine. One day, after listening to one of the videos, she decided to make a small change, learning to use the mobile phone her daughter had given her months ago, but that she barely touched. At first, she felt clumsy and frustrated, but little by little, she got the hang of it. She learned to send messages, make video calls, and eventually joined an online group where people shared recipes. This not only helped her stay more connected with her family, but in her own words, "It made me feel like I could still learn something new, that I'm not as disconnected from the world as I thought." Her story is a powerful reminder. No matter how old you are, there is always something new to discover. Rejecting an idea or experience just because it feels unfamiliar or uncomfortable at first is only limiting your own growth. The Stoics understood this well. Marcus Aurelius said, "If nature has given us reason, it is to adapt to change, not to resist it." Maybe for you, it's not learning technology, but it could be as simple as trying a hobby you've always been curious about, reading a book on an unfamiliar topic, or accepting an invitation to something outside your comfort zone. Every time you embrace something new, you're not just expanding your horizons, you're also sending yourself a message. I'm still curious, I'm still growing, I'm still alive. So ask yourself, what experience or idea have I been rejecting lately? Maybe it's time to change that. Because life never stops offering opportunities to learn and enjoy, as long as you don't close the door too soon. Number 10. Underestimating the impact of your emotions on others. We often think that what we feel stays inside us, that our emotions are private and don't affect those around us. But the truth is, everything you think, say, and do has a direct impact on the people close to you. What you project, consciously or unconsciously, can either build bridges or create walls. Imagine walking into a room with a glass full of water. If someone bumps into you even slightly, the water spills, affecting everything around it. That's how emotions work. What you carry inside will always spill over, influencing the relationships you value most. A thoughtless comment, a gesture of frustration, or even a silent but tense presence can leave a deeper mark than you realize. Seneca once said, "A calm spirit is like a steady flame that lights up those around it." But what happens when that flame turns into an uncontrolled fire? Your emotions don't just shape how you feel about yourself, they also shape how others perceive and experience you. Maybe you felt disappointed by someone close to you, a child who doesn't call often, or a friend who seems to have forgotten your importance. Those feelings, though valid, can manifest in ways that others interpret as rejection or criticism, even if you don't say them outright. Think about this. How do you want to be remembered by the people you love? As someone who brightened their path, or as someone who filled the air with tension and resentment? The key is awareness. Before reacting, pause for a moment and ask yourself, what impact will my words or actions have? Am I responding from a place of understanding or from an unresolved emotion? This simple pause can be the difference between strengthening a relationship or weakening it. But here's something even more important. This isn't about suppressing your emotions. Your feelings are valid and deserve to be acknowledged, but they also deserve to be expressed in a way that builds rather than destroys. Speaking with calmness, choosing gratitude over criticism, and recognizing your emotions without projecting them onto others are all acts of wisdom that leave a lasting, positive impact. Your emotions have immense power, not just over your own life, but over the lives of those around you. Using them with intention won't just draw people closer to you, it will also allow you to live with greater peace and purpose. Because in the end, what we leave in others is a reflection of what we cultivate within ourselves. Number 11, giving up on self-love, because it no longer matters. There's an idea that slowly settles in with age, like a whisper in the back of your mind. At this stage, does it really matter what I want or need? Maybe you've thought this when ignoring a physical pain because it's not that bad, or when telling yourself there's no point in dressing up, starting something new, or taking time to care for yourself. This mindset, though it may seem harmless, is one of the most devastating ways we abandon ourselves. Self-love has no age. It's not something you stop needing just because the years have passed. In fact, it becomes even more important with time. Loving yourself doesn't mean being selfish or prioritizing only your needs. It means recognizing your intrinsic worth, taking care of your body, mind, and spirit, and treating yourself with the same kindness you would offer to someone you deeply love. The Stoics spoke about self-love from a place of responsibility. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul takes on the color of your thoughts." If you treat yourself with neglect or indifference, it will reflect in everything you do and in how you experience life. But if you choose to respect yourself even in the smallest ways, that respect expands, shaping how you interact with the world. Loving yourself doesn't require grand gestures or radical transformations. It can start with simple acts, taking the time to care for your health, giving yourself moments of peace throughout the day, choosing kind words toward yourself instead of constant criticism. Maybe it's allowing yourself to enjoy a hobby, seeking help when you need it, or looking in the mirror with the acceptance of someone who understands that every wrinkle tells a story of strength. Self-love is also the driving force that allows you to face life's challenges with dignity. Taking care of your body isn't just about appearance. It's about recognizing that your physical well-being is the foundation for fully enjoying each day. Keeping your mind engaged and open is a way of honoring the time you still have ahead. Nurturing your spirit, practicing gratitude and acceptance, is a profound act of wisdom that connects you to what truly matters. Don't underestimate the power of small acts of love toward yourself. Every time you choose to prioritize yourself, you're building a fuller life, not by eliminating challenges, but by facing them from a place of strength and self-respect. Loving yourself isn't a luxury, it's a necessity and a responsibility, because if you don't do it, who will? Life isn't measured by the years you've lived, but by how you choose to live them. Today we've explored some of the habits that, without realizing it, can distance us from our best selves and from the people we love most. But recognizing them isn't a reason for self-judgment. It's an opportunity to do things differently, to choose with more awareness and self-compassion, and to strengthen our relationships with ourselves and those around us. We haven't reached this stage of life to give up. We're here to bloom in new ways. Every day is an invitation to build more meaningful connections, to care for our well-being, and to find joy in the small things that truly matter. No matter how much time has passed or what challenges you're facing, you can always make choices that transform your life starting now. My name is Gabriel, and if this is your first time here, I invite you to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss upcoming videos filled with practical wisdom and thoughtful reflections. If you've made it this far, it means you value personal growth and are committed to living with more purpose, and that deserves my deepest respect. To know who's been here until the end, I'd love for you to comment with the phrase, "I live with wisdom." Also, let me know where you're watching from. I'd love to hear from you and connect, because this journey is one we build together. Before you go, share this video with someone who might need these reflections. Sometimes, a simple message can spark big changes in someone's life. And if you're looking for more inspiration, here are some other videos to help you continue moving forward with wisdom and peace. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.